Since 2012, the Institute has trained over 1,000 people in the law of consultation. Why? Well, because public engagement and consultation staff in public, private or voluntary sectors know that there are enormous pitfalls lying in wait if they get it wrong. There have been about 200 legal challenges to consultations that have gone to the High Court, and many others which have settled out of court. The risks are high, so everyone involved in the process needs to know the rules. And they have been changing year on year, as Parliament imposes new obligations and judges interpret the law. Traditionally, Rion Jones and Elizabeth Gamble have delivered courses to groups of 10 to 20 people around the country. Specially adapted courses have been run in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, where some of the law is different. Customised content has also been built for those working in health and social care, local government and planning. The online course brings together many of these elements so that participants can obtain a comprehensive view of the law in 8 manageable modules. Each participant will follow this course at his or her own pace, taking anything between half an hour and an hour for each module. And, unlike the traditionally delivered course, you can return to the online materials whenever it suits you to refresh your memory. Here is what some of the content looks like. We use this diagram to illustrate the many overlapping issues which people rely upon when challenging the validity of a consultation. Note that they include statutory provisions stipulating what consultations are required. They also include laws specific to equality, the environment, or information. Friends of the Earth Cymru challenged Business Minister Edwina Hart's decision to back the so-called black route instead of properly assessing reasonable alternatives. The Court of Appeal held that the individual affected should have had the opportunity to be consulted on the specific proposal to close that particular day centre. It means he had locus standi to bring the challenge. This was one of the first cases to turn upon the wording of a consultation question and an allegation that a key issue was not being asked about. It was clear to all that the powers that be had already made up their minds to include Chesterfield in the new combined authority. This was a legal challenge to an NHS consultation in Dorset about a proposed reconfiguration of a range of services, including the centralisation of accident and emergency. There were 2 options, Bournemouth or Poole, and Bournemouth was preferred. However, the case actually turned on whether the Deputy Mayor, Sophie Linden, had properly given conscientious consideration to Professor Kohler's argument. His response had been summarised by the in-house team, but inadequately. A 32-year-old man with learning and mobility issues had spent 13 years attending the Kyle Adult Care Centre, which the council intended to close. The decision was shrouded in mystery and confusion, having reportedly been taken by an integrated joint board under the guise of approving a budget that involved savings achievable only by closing the centre. With 150 relevant judgments to cover, how do we decide which ones to include? Because of the pandemic, our team has had to move to online working, and we've had many discussions over Zoom to inform the content of the course. We are fortunate to work closely with practicing solicitors and barristers whose voices you may hear from time to time.
The Secretary of State had a duty on her to specify a certain number of children to be relocated from Europe into the UK.
We are not consulting on whether this is a new idea or an old idea. All we're doing is reading across from another part of government. Problem was that meant the Secretary of State didn't look at Talk Fracking's response, even though Talk Fracking had thought they were responding to a proper consultation.
The claim was around making Bournemouth Hospital the major emergency hospital for Dorset and Poole Hospital a planned care Hospital. The case went to judicial review, and the Health Service was successful in defending the judicial review.
But most important is that you hear the voices of the judges who have shaped and moved the law significantly in recent years. We quote from their judgments to demonstrate the way facts are presented and the depth of the arguments on which the cases are decided. Sometimes major advances or changes in the law come from the most unlikely cases. In 2014, they discovered the body of King Richard III, and this led to a court case as to where to rebury him and should there have been a public consultation. To check that participants have been able to absorb the learning, each module contains a short set of multiple choice questions which you need to answer correctly before proceeding to the next module. If you get it wrong, don't worry, check back and try again. It is worth it in the end. Completing this course will give you the confidence of understanding the key legal principles. You can relate your own projects to over 40 case studies covered in the 8 modules. They are all human stories and illustrate the trials and tribulations of public bodies, politicians, civil servants and managers as they try to organise change, often in the face of public opposition and well-resourced campaigners. For most serious professionals, this will be important knowledge to go with your skill set, a helpful step in your career development, and it is worth doing properly. This course can be taken at your own pace. Maybe you work best doing a module at a time, or perhaps you want to run through it all at once while it's fresh in your mind. We'd recommend setting aside around 3/4 of an hour per module to give you time to view the materials and answer the questions, but that is just a suggestion. The case summaries can be downloaded and printed so you can scribble your own notes as you go. And don't forget that Module 8 will be updated annually for the next 3 years, so you pick up on any important new cases. The law of consultation can be delivered in-house or for teams of people. Whilst social distancing applies, you and your colleagues can undertake this online course, with an optional follow-up of a virtual workshop delivered by the Institute's own experts. This will enable you to discuss how the law of consultation applies in your own organisation or environment and cement the learning you have acquired from completing the online course. To register for the law of consultation, contact the Institute.